So my name is Sam Myers. I'm a physician working in the sort of newly emerging field of planetary health, which is focused on trying to understand what are the human health impacts of sort of large-scale human-caused environmental change around the planet. Well, so the critical issues are that we are transforming and disrupting just about every large natural system on the planet, from the climate system to biodiversity to land use and land cover to global pollution to resource scarcity. And that transformation is accelerating. Most of those changes are happening at the fastest rates in the history of our species, and they're interacting with each other in a whole series of complex ways to really threaten, kind of primary conditions for human health and well-being across the planet. And so the deep concern of practitioners in the field of planetary health is that the majority of the global burden of disease for people is going to be driven by these sort of large-scale environmental changes, and therefore changes in the quality and quantity of food that we can eat, the quality of our air, our exposure to infectious diseases, our exposure to natural hazards, even the habitability of the places that we live. And so we're trying very hard to sort of quantify, define and quantify those threats and understand how particular changes in specific natural systems affect the health of particular populations. And by quantifying those in a sort of rigorous research process, then be able to advocate for policies or interventions that will reduce the vulnerability of the populations we're studying. And so there's a whole world of work to do around how we protect ourselves from these sort of impending changes that we're seeing. Well, so I think there's some research areas that are really, really, really important right now, and we've all been touching on one of them over the last couple days, but for different reasons, and that's what we eat. Our food production system is transforming the planet, and those transformations are coming back to affect what we can eat and all kinds of nutritional outcomes. And so there's a real need for research to understand those dimensions much more. So I would say that realm of sort of environmental change and food systems. Another area that's really understudied is around displacement and conflict. So we're very concerned that many parts of the world are becoming, at least temporarily, if not permanently, uninhabitable. That whole dimension of how environmental change is affecting human populations through displacement and conflict is really understudied. We don't have good numbers. We don't understand it very well. And then I would say the third area is around mental health impacts. And so again, there's just a sort of vast kind of concern about eco-anxiety, about what are the sort of mental health burdens of knowing that our consumption patterns are driving climate change, that coral reefs are disappearing, that species are going extinct. What is the burden of disease that we experience from carrying that knowledge? And then more specifically, for indigenous communities that are seeing ways of life essentially disappear and have to imagine children or grandchildren that can't partake in their cultural traditions, what is that burden? And there's very little sort of psychiatric eco-epidemiology to explore those mental health burdens. I would say if you think of animal rights as the sort of need to protect all living beings on the planet, which is really where planetary health kind of comes from, out of a place of self-interest. It doesn't come there from an ethical place necessarily, although I certainly agree there are lots of very strong ethical arguments for it. But if you take the premise that we need to protect life on the planet, then there are a whole series of things that we know we need to be doing quite differently. And thinking about a sort of systematic approach to addressing the policy and legal framework that would help us get there, I think is a really rich conversation. And that conversation hasn't gone on with the kind of focus that I've been seeing here in our planetary health community. So I sort of want to bring that back to our community and say, what can we learn from all of that? Well, animals, to me, they're sort of cohabitants of the only habitable planet that we know of, that share this sort of entangled dependence on the functioning of our natural systems, and that have a right to be there, have a right not to be extinguished by our sort of sloppy activities, and that also provide a lot that we need as a healthy species ourselves. And so that sort of entanglement suggests that we need to find a way to take care of them in a much more effective way.